Deep in the heart of an ancient forest, where the trees grow tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers, there stands a mansion. A house forgotten by time, its walls steeped in secrets, its halls echoing with whispers of the past. This is not just a house, it is a prison for the dead. And this is the story of Sarah, a young woman who inherited this house and the horrors that came with it. Sarah had always been a skeptic. Ghosts, curses, the supernatural. She dismissed them as stories meant to scare children. But when she arrived at her grandmother's mansion, something felt wrong. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. The house loomed before her, its Gothic spires piercing the grey sky, its windows dark and lifeless. It was as if the house itself was watching her, waiting for her to step inside. The first night was uneventful, or so she thought. As she lay in the master bedroom, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows like an angry spirit trying to break in. But beneath the sound of the storm, she heard something else. A whisper, soft, almost imperceptible. It called her name. Sarah. Stay. She told herself it was just her imagination, but the voice lingered in her mind, haunting her dreams. The days that followed were a blur. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They came from the walls, the floors, even the ceilings. Sometimes they were soothing, almost comforting. Other times, they were angry, demanding. Sarah tried to ignore them, focusing on renovating the house. But the more she worked, the more the house seemed to resist her. Tools went missing, paint peeled off the walls as soon as it dried. And the cold, it was always so cold, as if the house itself was alive, breathing its icy breath down her neck. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, Sarah found a box of old photographs and letters. The attic was dimly lit, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. As she sifted through the box, her fingers brushed against a photograph. It was her grandmother standing in front of the mansion, her face grim, her eyes hollow. The letters were addressed to someone named Elias. They spoke of a ritual, of binding voices. Sarah's curiosity was piqued, but a growing sense of dread settled in her chest, like a weight she couldn't shake. That night, the whispers became unbearable. They were no longer faint, they were loud, overlapping, filled with anguish. Sarah followed the sound to the library, her heart pounding in her chest. The library was dark, the shelves lined with ancient books, their spines cracked and brittle. As she stepped inside, the whispers seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then she saw it, a bookshelf, slightly ajar. Behind it, a hidden lever. The shelf swung open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Sarah hesitated, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. But something compelled her to go forward. With a flashlight in hand, she descended into the hidden room. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. The walls were covered in strange symbols, carved deep into the stone. In the center of the room stood an altar covered in candles and dried blood, and on the altar, her grandmother's journal. As Sarah read the journal, the truth unfolded. Her grandmother had been a practitioner of dark rituals, trying to communicate with the spirits trapped in the house. The mansion was built on an ancient burial ground, and the spirits had grown restless over the centuries. Her grandmother had tried to bind them, but the ritual went wrong. The spirits broke free. The journal ended with a warning: do not listen to the whispers. They will consume you. As Sarah closed the journal, the candles on the altar flickered and went out. The whispers stopped, and the room fell silent. For a moment, she thought it was over. But then, the walls began to crack. A cold wind rushed through the room, and the symbols on the walls glowed faintly. Shadowy figures emerged from the cracks, their eyes hollow, their mouths twisted in silent screams. Sarah tried to run, but the door slammed shut. The spirits surrounded her, their whispers now deafening. She felt their icy hands gripping her, pulling her toward the walls. Desperate, she screamed for help, but no one could hear her. The last thing she saw was the face of her grandmother among the spirits, her eyes filled with sorrow. Weeks later, a real estate agent arrived at the mansion to prepare it for sale. The house was eerily quiet, the air thick with an unshakable sense of dread. As the agent walked through the library, she heard a faint whisper coming from the walls. It was so soft she almost missed it. "Welcome." And so the cycle begins again. The house waits, its walls whispering, its secrets buried deep. Who will be the next to answer its call? Who will be the next to disappear into the darkness? The mansion stands silent and still, waiting for its next victim.